Welcome to the Mitten Mysteries podcast, hosted by Haley V.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the Mitten Mysteries podcast. I am your host, Haley V. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you are new here, we love to talk about all things creepy, strange, unusual, anything that has to do with anything weird in Michigan. We are going to be talking about it here on this podcast. But for today's episode, we are going to be talking about Romeo, Michigan. It is one of the coolest towns here in the state of Michigan. We're going to be talking about a lot of the history, the ghost stories and legends of this town, and all the fun things that happen here. Also, before we begin, I just wanted to let you guys know on the podcast, if you are listening with just your headphones today and not watching, I have video now up on YouTube, so if you would like to watch all of the fun photos and videos I'm going to be adding into the podcast, you can go ahead and go over there, subscribe, make sure you guys hit the thumbs up button so we get our videos out there. I really do appreciate it. I know how I am. I'm a visual learner, so I love to watch podcasts as well as listen to them. So if you're that type of learner also, go ahead and head over to the Mitten Mysteries YouTube channel and you can go ahead and subscribe and watch them there also. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. It really does help out this podcast to get it out there to other people who may be interested in all the fun, creepy things about Michigan. So if you know anybody that loves strange and unusual topics, go ahead and send this over to them to go ahead and give them a listen, because I know I'm always looking for fun and interesting podcasts. So if you guys are ready to learn all about Romeo, Michigan, then keep on watching, or listening, I should say. So just a little bit of back history of the town of Romeo, Michigan. So the first settlement here in Romeo, Michigan was in 1821 by a man named Jeremiah Allen, and he was from Canada. He actually built the first log cabin that was here in town. Romeo, before it was Romeo, Michigan, was originally known as the Indian Village. It was a winter campground for a band of the Chippewa natives that lived here. Some things that Romeo is well known for is its Peach Festival. Peach Fest happens every single year around Labor Day weekend. It is some of the most fun times ever if you have a family. They have carnivals, they have car shows, they have a parade, craft shows, they have a bunch of food vendors. It is probably one of the best times of the year to be living in Romeo. Even if you don't live in Romeo, you can come from all over. The Peach Festival started in 1931 and has always been here since then. Romeo is also very well known for Tilson Street. Tilson Street is basically a street full of very old homes that decorate insane Halloween stages for each home. And I'm talking every single home decorates on this street. Romeo is a very much Halloween town. I feel like it is the Halloween town of Michigan. It is a very big attraction for a lot of people here in Romeo, also from all over Michigan. Thousands and thousands of people come and trick or treat on Tilson Street every single year. So if you're a big Halloween decor, haunted house person, definitely check out Tilson Street when you are here. Another fun thing is there's a Dairy Queen at the end of Tilson Street, and they always have so many people hanging out at the Dairy Queen. You can get some ice cream while walking and seeing all of the homes with your family. So in the 1820s to 1830s, more migrant European and American families began to settle in this area. They built homes and established many businesses. They renamed the community as Hoxie's Settlement, named after a man who opened the inn on Main Street. In 1839, Hoxie Settlement became incorporated and was renamed as the Village of Romeo. The name was actually suggested by the wife of a local merchant named Nathaniel Taylor because it was short, musical, and very not well known of a name. Romeo once served as a trading center for the timber industry, and it had many mills processing lumber from the region. Many wealthy timber families resided here, and dozens of stately Victorian mansions still are here today. Romeo is distinct in the area for having a fairly robust traditional downtown, which has never suffered a major fire. Because of this, some stores and restaurants downtown have features such as original tin ceilings from the Civil War. In the early 20th century, Romeo was the site of an early business devoted to the automobile industry. The Detroit Auto Vehicle Company operated here from 1904 to 1908. So that is just a little bit of background of Romeo, Michigan. Now we're actually going to go ahead and move on to the haunted history of the homes here in Romeo, Michigan. A lot of the homes are built in the 1800s. They are the early 1800s. There are tons of homes here with a lot of history, and a lot of presences. There's a lot of ghost stories that are connected to these homes, so we are going to go ahead and get into it. I am actually reading from a book that was authored by a woman who has lived here her entire life. She actually passed away not too long ago. Her family has been here for a very long time. So her name is JUDY GASS-LOPUS. This book is what I will be reading from, and these are the stories from this book. So let's move on to some of the creepy ghost stories of Romeo, Michigan. So the first home I'm going to be talking about is the Billow House. It is located at 150 Hollister Street, and the story basically begins with a woman and a man named Gloria and Tim Billow, and they have been active people in the Historical Society in Romeo for years. So when Gloria and Tim were young, her and her husband were looking for a place to live in Romeo in the area. It was definitely a place that they really wanted to be. They found a nice little historical house built back in the 1850s, and about halfway down Hollister Street on the north side is where the house is. And only about a week after they moved in, they decided to move a lamp that was hanging from the ceiling in the living room. They took down the lamp and they relocated it into the middle of the bedroom ceiling. One day they came home and their bed was moved all the way on the other side of the room, and their ceiling lamp was carefully lined up on the bed, all taken apart. So they came home, their bed was moved, their lamp was completely down off the ceiling, and it was on the bed all taken apart and moved to the other side of the room. And they did not do that themselves. So there's obviously someone there or something there messing with them. So another time, Tim was in the kitchen doing the dishes when all of a sudden he felt someone trying to remove his wallet from his back pocket. So he turned around and quickly thinking it was Gloria, no one was there. Gloria was sound asleep in the bedroom because she was a nurse that was working nights and sleeping during the day, so it wasn't her. So one day, Gloria was working in the kitchen when the lock on the latch of the basement door unhooked and came open. They had two cats that were on the chairs nearby, and they turned their heads to follow something invisible moving by. And then as it moved by, it actually opened the back door, went outside, and went out, and then it closed the door. Something was in there, came out of the basement, walked by the cat saw it, it went outside, shut the door, and Gloria's probably like, what the heck? It was learned that a gentleman named, I'm so sorry if I butcher this name, but it was learned that the gentleman that lived there that they think was the ghost presence that was there was named Mr. Clennons, and he had lived in the house for a number of years. So being tired of having to go all the way out to the backyard to use the outhouse all winter in the cold, he built a toilet in the basement, and then they learned that he actually passed away in the basement of the home. Maybe he's trying to let them know and messing with the stuff because he probably doesn't like it. I don't know. So the next house that I want to talk about is the George Washington Braub House. It's located on 185th Main Street. So the George Washington Braub House was built by George Washington Braub in 1877. He was a very wealthy politician and local bank president, and he owned a carriage factory right across the street from the house. The house was a duplex which his family shared with his two sisters, Dr. Alice Braub, who was a very active Monday Club member, and Caroline Braub. They lived in the south side of the house. George and his wife had two sons, and only a year after that they moved into the house, they actually died of influenza. They died from the flu, and their mother passed away close to 6 weeks later, which is absolutely horrible. So in the years to follow, the big beautiful home became many things. It was an osteopathic hospital. It was a tuberculosis sanatorium. It was a 4-unit apartment. It was then turned into the White Gables nursing home and adult foster care facility. And then finally in 1999, the home was purchased by Tom and Kelly Stevens. Through a lot of remodeling and redecorating, the Stevensons opened up the Braub House Bed and Breakfast. So they have a lot of parties, weddings, and all of that there at the home. So I'm guessing that made things feel a lot better. After several unusual happenings, a paranormal society visited the house and found spirit energy that was in the home. And one of the energies was the heartbroken mother that had passed away. Also with the young boys that lived in the house that actually passed away from the flu too. They are still believed to be there. They can hear them playing around upstairs with toys, running around. The woman is actually seen a lot downstairs. So George's wife is often seen in the corner of people's eyes just passing by. She often looks out the window People will see her looking out the window to see her sons playing outside. She is also seen in the very back bedroom, and that is actually where she would watch the kids outside play and climb the trees. So this home was recently purchased by Martha and Gary Phillips, who live in the big house up on Prospect Street. The house was actually purchased to house Gary's parents, and his dad has always been very sensitive to the paranormal and spiritual side of things. It turns out that the Braub house has been very active for him and his sensitivities. He experiences shadow figures and voices like Kelly and Tom did. The most interesting things that have happened to Gary's dad is he has seen a little girl in a red dress there at the home, and he has saw her sitting on the floor playing with toys. Mr. Phillips also noticed the disappearance of his favorite candies that he would lay around the house. The next home we're going to be talking about is 262 Prospect Street. It was built in 1880, and it was a small historical home. In the past year, a developer in town purchased and actually tore down the home, rebuilt another house on the site. So where the house was built was in the backyard of the new home that was built after it. Fred said that they lived in the original house from 1950 to 1964 while he was a young fellow in school. Fortunately, before his family moved into the original house, it had been updated with indoor plumbing, running water, and a gas furnace because it was built in the 1880s, so I don't really think they had all that back in the day. The first thing that had happened to Fred was there was an image of two ladies sitting on opposite ends of the couch. They were dressed in nice Victorian dresses from that time period, and they appeared to be very friendly. He said that they were very nice seeming spirits. He said that he always felt an immediate wave of happiness whenever they appeared, and he always felt protected by them. He had many childhood accidents and always came out uninjured in those accidents. These included falling out of trees, windows, half-loft doors, bicycle accidents, and he was always able to walk away uninjured, which is insane. One day he slipped and fell down the stairs, and all of a sudden there was a pillow that was underneath his head. Once again, he was able to get up unhurt and uninjured. His sister didn't have much to do with these experiences, but she will never forget the day and how he was spiritually saved from the injuries and was able to get up and walk away. As he approached high school, there weren't many happenings around that house, and later on, looking into the family history, he found out that the two ladies were sisters, and they lived in the family home, one after becoming a widow and returned to live with her spinster sister. They seemed to be very happy, caring people whom Fred never forgot. So the next home we're going to be talking about is 168 First Street. Now, this was a beautiful Italianate residence on 168 First Street, and it was built by John W. Dyer in 1860. Mr. Dyer had arrived in Romeo in 1836 and was the owner of one of the largest general stores of that day. He acquired the First Street property shortly after it had been established as part of the public village of Romeo in 1858. The parcel stretched over to Benjamin Street and to West Bradley Street. It was probably one of the highest elevations in the Romeo area, and the home was 3 stories tall with a widow's walk on top, from which one could see smoke from passing ships on Lake St. Clair and the river over 30 miles away on a clear day. The Dyer family had 7 children, and this home was a setting for many joyous occasions. A memorable time was July 4th, 1878, when Dyer treated his family and most of the townspeople to a spectacular display of fireworks. So many family weddings and special events were held here at this home. In 1889, Mr. Dyer actually suffered from a heart attack, but still tried to be active. And unfortunately, around September of that year, Miss Dyer died unexpectedly. While planning for her funeral, Mr. Dyer unfortunately also passed away. The Tyler family purchased the house in 1926, and he told it was a very fun experience for his family to go through the 3rd floor attic up on the platform on the very top, where he said that he could view ships and smoke on a clear day. He showed pictures that were taken from high above to the family below by his father and brother. He also told about how the family would fill balloons full of helium with note cards and send them off, and he actually got back postage from the places where the cards would land. They would send back a note to the house. They once received a postcard all the way from Canada, which is insane. So Jim's mother told the story about her daughter that was born to her in the early 1920s. So Dr. Frappier, a local Romeo physician, came to the home to deliver the baby. Home births were very common at that time, but unfortunately the baby did not survive the home birth, and they buried her next to the porch under the big tree that they had at the home. And at that time, home burial was very common in that time because a lot of people couldn't afford to be buried in the cemeteries of the cities. Another tale about this house that Jim's father has told was about a ghost that he had seen when he walked outside. He seen a ghost of a man leaning up against the tree. And since Halloween time was very close by, he thought it was his brother actually playing a trick on him. Come to find out, when he went in to tell his family to come outside, his brother was asleep in the bedroom upstairs, so he was not the one playing tricks on him. It was a ghost. So during the Depression era, the Tylers lost their home due to back taxes that they could not pay to the city, so unfortunately they had to move. So I'm sorry if I pronounce this name wrong, forgive me if I do. The Beaupre family lived in the house prior to 1985, and a woman named Nancy was cleaning the upstairs before they actually had moved into the home. And as she stood up from collecting the dust in the dustpan, she realized that she was actually not alone in the home. She stood up and she looked around and she realized that there were a bunch of people in the house with her. They were all dressed up in old-fashioned garments, like Victorian garments. She stood up and she looked around and she realized she was not alone. She was in a house full of wedding guests from early Victorian era. There was tons of people dressed up in the old garments for a wedding party. She had seen the bride, the groom, and all of the wedding party guests that were in the home. There were about 12 young people that she had seen with her own eyes as she's having this vision of the home back in that time period. So she believes it could have been one of the Dyer family's weddings that they had had in the past, and she was actually having a vision of it. So Bill and Ellie Steiker occupied the house in 1986, and Ellie had several interesting stories to share. So one of the first unusual happenings was soon after they moved into their new home with their 2 dogs. All of a sudden one day the dogs were barking wildly in the side room, and Ellie entered to see what was going on. There in the window she had saw a white cat. It was sunbathing in the sun, relaxing. So when she saw this cat, she was like, how did this cat get in here? Before that, she had actually talked to the neighbor. Her name was Kathy Edwards from next door. And she warned that her cat loved to sneak into people's houses and kind of sunbathe in the window. So she actually thought that this cat was her neighbor's cat. She went to go talk to her neighbor to tell her about the cat, and she realized that Kathy's cat was a black cat and not a white cat. So she realized that this was a phantom cat that was sitting in her window. No one ever seen the cat enter or leave the house. So whenever the dogs got upset, she knew exactly why they were getting upset, is because the ghost cat was in the window. In the early years of living in that house, one of their daughters had a ghostly experience in her upstairs bedroom. When she walked in there, there were 7 people all looking down at someone on the bed. It is believed it had been Miss Dyer's children overlooking her as she was passing away. Another time, when Miss Steiker's mother was staying over, she awakened to find several young ladies all over her room. It was as if she was observing a sleepover from the past. Her own clothes were strewn all over the room, so she had questioned her granddaughters about if any of her friends maybe had visited her room, but they denied anything that had happened. So about 15 years ago, Mr. and Mrs. Steiker decided to add a garage to the house, and when the excavating was being done for the foundation, they found the top of a large arched, closed brick entrance to the basement. They knew that there had been a large barn behind the house, so the rumor is Mr. Dyer was actually a part of the Underground Railroad. So it could have been an entrance into the barn out back. During Prohibition, which lasted from 1920 to 1933, it is told that the owner's basement was a local hangout for friends where they could drink booze and smoke and kind of hang out during that time because it was not allowed during that time. So for years, the Steikers have smelled pipe and cigar smoke in the house, but the weird thing is no one in their family smokes, so they think that is what it is from. So another interesting story that has happened in this house is Ellie had asked her soon-to-be daughter-in-law to help with some housework, and she was sweeping the stairs to the 3rd floor, and she had noticed footprints that led all the way upstairs. And the scary part is if there was footsteps going all the way up, there would have to be footsteps coming all the way back down, but unfortunately there was no footsteps coming all the way back down, so it was just footsteps leading up to the 3rd floor. So the police were called and they responded to her concern by searching the entire premise, but there were no intruders anywhere. There was no one to be found in the house. So a lot of unusual things that have also happened here at this home are hearing doors slam, footsteps, voices, lights turning on and off, TVs turning on and off, and a lot of the contractors that were hired to work in the home would actually not work in the home unless the homeowners were there. So as of 2021, Ellie was searching through records of old boxes and she felt like someone had been watching her that entire time. The next home we're going to be talking about here is 150 South Rawls Street. So the person who had owned the home was named Charles Ellsworth. He was an owner of the clothing store in Romeo at that time, and the home was approximately made in 1900. So very little is known about Mr. Ellsworth, but what we do know is that he was married and unfortunately did unalive himself in the barn out in the back of his home. When Sally and Peter Orlando bought the home in 2003, it had sat vacant for over a year and needed extensive repair and remodeling. In the village, the house had a nickname of the cat house, as the previous owner had over 100 cats living with her. Strange occurrences transpired in the house as soon as the renovations began. Scraps of the plastic were still attached to the nail heads, and the bulk of the plastic was found rolled up in the corner of the room, and it looked like someone was not happy about the changes that were being taken place in the home. Another time, their 3-year-old niece, Katie, left her toys in the living room. She hurried over to look up at the stairs and said, "Hello." When Sally asked her who she was talking to, Katie said, "You know, the nice lady that lives upstairs." While sitting outside on a warm evening, Peter, Sally, and Sally's mother all smelled a strong old-fashioned perfume. At first, only the ladies could smell it. A bit later, the scent faded to them and moved over to where Peter smelled it. Sally said, "Mary, is that you?" With that, the smell disappeared. Sometimes during storms, the cat spirits made themselves known. It would sound like a cat jumping on and off the bed upstairs or running up and down the stairs. Sometimes they even felt a cat rubbing up against them. But their cat was right beside them. The next home we're going to be talking about is 439 Morton Street, and it is called the Alden Giddings residence. A gentleman named by the name of Alden Giddings, 1820 to 1886, arrived in Romeo from Connecticut in 1857, where his older brothers Edwin and Moses had already achieved wealth in merchandising. Alden opened his own dry goods store and, like his brothers, soon accumulated a fortune. He purchased 80 acres west of his brothers on Morton Street. He built a beautiful Second Empire French cottage in 1872 with a full mansard roof. It surpassed any lovely home in the village, and all different varieties of wood were used in each room. A cistern system was also used for soft rainwater, and like his brother's home, during the 1940s, the house was completely rebuilt in the Gone with the Wind style by Mr. and Mrs. Paul Howard, owners of the local Romeo movie theater. It was then sold in 1949 to Bert Hughes and his wife, Dr. Elizabeth Stone, who lived in there for about 19 years. She was a highly respected doctor, and she spent her first medical years in Europe during World War II, where she gained much experience. John Couch, a longtime area resident, purchased the Giddings estate in 2016 and had recently updated the home. He was able to share many pieces of information on Alden Giddings' family, along with some nice family photos that he had been passed down. When asked about the unexplained happenings, he said that there are times where strange little things occurred in the house, but the predominant thing is the doorbell rings, and when checked on, no one was there. So yeah, those are a few of the stories of the homes here in Romeo, Michigan. I have a ton more, so if you guys would love to hear them in the next podcast episode, just let me know. If you guys want to go ahead and follow us over on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, we have it all at the Mitten Mysteries podcast. If you happen to have any interesting stories, ghost stories, legends about your family or your home here in Michigan, go ahead and send them over to themittenmysteries@gmail.com, and I will go ahead and read them to our viewers and subscribers. If you haven't already, make sure you guys subscribe to this podcast and subscribe to our YouTube channel over there on YouTube at the Mitten Mysteries. But I thank you guys so much for listening and so much for watching, and we'll see you guys in our next episode. Stay spooky, y'all.